So a lot of you guys have been asking me, what is my favorite AR build to run in the Division 2? While this might not be my favorite, it's probably up there in the top 5. And when I tell you this build is just amazing, it really is. Because every time I pop that pulse, I can just see the whole battlefield. It lights up the enemy like a Christmas tree. And with this build, you will constantly have your pulse at disposal. And that's because the duration and then the cooldown time is so short that by the time the duration of the pulse is done, I have it already back. And once you get everything procced, this build actually hits really hard. Now this build actually reminds me a lot of Division 1. If you guys played Division 1, you guys know that if you didn't run with a pulse on your team, or if you were solo and you didn't run a pulse, there was something wrong with your build. And it's kind of fun to use again. I really like the fact that when I do pulse, I do see the enemies, and I love having the short cooldown time, which means that I will always be able to use my pulse at all times. And as soon as I do pulse, it does help with my chest piece talent. So what we'll do is we'll definitely show you the full breakdown of this build. But before we do, I just want to show you guys a little bit more gameplay. But what about PvP? Does this build work in PvP? And 100% it does. And when I tell you guys that, I'm not lying. This is me using it right here. I'm using the pulse and the striker drone to make sure that my talents are proccing. And you guys are gonna see these enemies just start to get laid out with the beam, and the amount of damage I have is just incredible. And when I tell you guys this is the build, it's the same exact build that I was using in PvE. So this build is one of those builds that you can run not only in PvE but also in PvP, and that's what's so amazing about it. And that's why I really like this one. So if you guys have any questions at the end of this video, don't forget to ask me in the comment section. And if you guys enjoy this video, well, make sure you leave a thumbs up. But let's dive into the build video right now. So for the specialization, I went with the gun class, probably my go-to specialization for most of my builds. I really like this because of the 10% armor on kill, the 5% rate of fire after you get a kill, just a lot of benefits from running this specialization. Now, of course, if you guys watched any of my videos, I love the Police M4, probably one of my go-to weapons in the game. This one gives me 92,000 damage, 850 RPM with a 50 round mag. I have assault rifle damage, health damage, I roll 10% damage to targets out of cover on there, and then I have in sync. So every time I'm hitting a shot, my skill is hitting a shot, that's 30% skill damage and 30% weapon damage. Now for the secondary, I have the Scorpio. For PvP, I'd probably swap this out, but for PvE, an amazing shotgun to have. For the mask, this is really what allows me to get that pulse so quick. I have the Night Watcher mask. This is the named Gilligar mask. This gives me 5% total armor, 170,000 armor, 100% scanner pulse haste. That means that works on that pulse. I have critical hit damage and then a critical hit damage mod on here. So that 100% scanner pulse haste is going to improve how fast I'm getting my skill back, and that's why this one actually is really good with this build. For the chest, we are running a Fenris chest. This gives me 10% assault rifle. We have weapon damage, critical hit chance, and a critical hit damage mod. Now the talent on here is what works amazing with the pulse. Spotter amplifies total weapon damage and skill damage by 15% to pulse enemies. Now this is amplified, so this is not only for my weapon, but also my skill. And since I'm pulsing all the time, Spotter is always active. For the holster, we have the Cheska holster with the 10% critical hit chance, 15% weapon damage, critical hit damage, and critical hit chance. You definitely want to put a Cheska piece because since we are using the AR, we don't get as much bonus critical hit chance as we get on an SMG. So having one piece Cheska is very needed. For the knee pads, we have the Overlord knee pads, the name version, so we get the Fox Prayer. We have weapon damage, damage to targets out of cover, which is multiplicative, and then the 12% critical hit damage. And you guys should know by now we're using it for the 8% damage to targets out of cover. And you probably guessed it, we have the Contractor gloves. Another one we're just using for the 8% damage to armor this time, and we have 170,000 armor rolls on here with 12% critical hit damage. And for the final piece, we have the Grupo Sombra backpack for the 15% critical hit damage. We have weapon damage, critical hit chance, critical hit damage, and then a 12% critical hit damage mod. Now I'm running Vigilance on this one, increase total weapon damage by 25%, because that's gonna give you the most damage. But if you wanna run Companion, that's another great option, and then you don't have to worry about the damage being disabled when you're taking damage. Now you just have to make sure that you do have a skill or an ally near you to make sure that Companion is active. Now remember, we only have 1.2 million armor on this, but if you want to bump that up, then you just roll another armor piece. And sometimes I do that. Sometimes I have 3 armor rolls versus just 2. Now for the crit chance on this build, 53%, 168% crit damage, 75% health damage, 8% armor damage, and then 18% damage to targets out of cover on the build, because remember it's not showed here, 20% health damage, and that's why this build hits really hard even at 1.2 million armor. And like I said, the reason I love the gunner class is because that armor on kill 115,000 every time I get a kill, and that's why this build gives me a little bit of survivability once I knock those enemies down. For the skills, we have the striker drone. Now this is going to proc in sync, so that way we can get that 30% extra damage. Also, it does pretty solid damage right there at 18,000, and remember with spotter it gains 15%. And then for the pulse, look at this. Cooldown on this pulse is only 9 seconds. The duration is 11 seconds, so we should always have the pulse active. The effective radius is 115 meters, and then I do have a 15% radius mod on there and a 15% effect duration mod on there from the gunner class. You get those with the gunner class. So this pulse, this scanner should always be active at all times. And as you guys saw in the gameplay, I always had the pulse active because of the way this build works. And remember, that pulse isn't just for you. Your teammates will also see those pulse enemies. So not only is this a great solo player build, but this is also a great team build, because pulsing enemies also allows your players to know where NPCs are, or if you're in the dark zone, know where those dark zone rogue agents are. So if you guys are looking for a build to run in solo or group play that has a pulse that you can constantly use over and over, well, this is 100% the build for you. Now, if you guys want to see me play any of my builds live, I've been telling you guys I've been streaming daily on twitch.tv/nothingbutskills. I think last week we streamed Monday through Saturday. We just didn't stream on Sunday. So I was available 6 days out of the week to catch me live, ask those questions. And that 100% is the best place to find me and ask me questions, because sometimes these videos are hard to answer those questions for you because I just get a lot of people commenting, and during the live streams is the best place to catch me live. Now, if you decided to put a little bit more armor, this one actually has 3 rolls of armor and the damage is still pretty solid. And as you guys seen, I'm able to pulse, continue to keep that pulse up, and just beam these enemies from far. And that's why I tell you guys, no matter whether you're playing heroic content or you're in the dark zone, farming players, this build is that build for you. So we'll wrap up the video here, guys. I appreciate all the support as always, but until the next Division 2 video, Nothing But Skills is out.